which is fine, but it sounded very highbrow, and I thought when I go on the shock absorber, it definitely
Well, that's not true.
makes it the opposite of highbrow. I just talk about what I think. I'm not referencing people.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not going to say that because you'll put it in the podcast.
Now that's a way to start a podcast.
Everyone has learned. Everyone has learned.
Because I've been crying.
Woo! Yes.
I'm laughing and crying.
Woo.
Yes,
Okay,
from
good.
laughing,
Crying.
laughing.
Yeah, we have an upset fee before the podcast starts. Welcome back to the Chip Lunch Podcast. It is wonderful to have you along with us, and apologies for no episode last week. It was another blunder by me.
We'll get there.
A blunder. But we'll keep it secret.
We're building resiliency.
Building the tension.
Yeah, yes.
Oh, so what, you recorded one and can't use it? Or
I
it didn't
accidentally.
Put in the comments who you think it was.
Yeah,
If you get it right, you win a year subscription
to the podcast,
to the Patreon. That doesn't exist.
I worked out what Patreon. You talk about Patreon all the time, and I didn't know what it was. And then I was listening to another podcast, and they were advertising like sign up to our Patreon. I'm like, that's what Braden keeps talking
Yeah,
about.
it's like a subscription thing, and like it's how you like
you get extra content,
member benefits or whatever.
Yeah. Can you do that for art as well?
You can do it for heaps of stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's just a platform.
Okay, because
I think you can do it for.
There's an artist that we've got a picture of.
Yeah.
Andy Kehoe, and I'd seen something on like an Instagram thing for him or something. He releases like special edition things, and I think he talks about Patreon. So when you said it, I'm like, I thought that was that artist thing. What is that? And then I heard it on a podcast. And went,
yeah,
clear.
because
It must be the same thing.
Yeah,
But the idea it comes
use
from
it as well. Sometimes.
Yeah, they do. But the idea comes from that old school idea of having a patron.
Yeah.
And they pay you to create art.
Yeah, well, that's it. Like it made sense from that art thing, and then I was like, oh, it must be a podcast. Anyway, I wasn't sure if you were talking about the same thing, but then when I heard it again, I'm like, oh yeah, it is the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you've clarified that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Now I know what it is.
Did you already say who it was? You haven't said who it was last week.
Hi.
No, I said I'd keep it a secret.
Yeah. I'm just saying if they guess it.
Oh, guess
Try
the
and
guess.
guess it.
I thought you were saying
Because it'll also give us ideas on who should come on.
that's a good idea.
That's a good suggestion.
Ah, yes.
Great suggestion. Yep. Put it in the comments if you think it is. But also, try not to dox anyone. Just reveal their address or something.
Maybe first names.
I'm very happy this morning, not because I'm recovering from being sick, but because you have covered up the poo marks on behind me. If you have a look on the YouTube, there's a wonderful
He's a platypus.
little platypus. So very native as well.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. And it looks a lot
Stu
better.
will be happy.
Yeah, Stu will be happy.
Stu is
I think
fan
that's
of-
why I picked the platypus. I was in a conversation with him this week
Oh, okay.
where he was talking with someone else who had met a platypus along the way. Rescued a baby platypus, actually.
Oh, really?
So that's why I think I picked that. There was a cat, and I almost put that up because
for
Fee was
Fee.
coming on, but I went with the native.
I'm more than
platypus.
happy with the platypus. Platypus is good.
Because apparently they found platypuses,
Platypi.
are bleeding. They're bleeding, guys. They're breeding again in the national park.
Ah,
I think they found one in the national park.
little puggles.
Is that what they're called?
Yeah,
Like
they're called a
babies?
puggle.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
And
pretty
I had
cool.
a toy when I was little that was
Yeah.
called a puggle,
Oh, okay.
but I didn't know until years later that it was basically there was nothing in the blurb of the toy to say that puggle came from platypus. So it sort of looked like it was like it was like a little beanbag toy.
Yeah.
But it was like the shape of platypus. It didn't have a beak or anything. It was very, very stylized. So there wasn't a lot of thing to it. But I remember they were quite popular because I had one and my sister had one and my cousins had one. And that was back in the day where we used to spend heaps of time hanging out at my nan's house. Like, it's funny. I don't know if I've talked about this before on the podcast, but there was, before Soul Revival was my every Saturday thing, when I was a kid, my nana's house was my every Saturday thing. So I went from family to church family. Anyway, it's funny. And it's one of the reasons I think I have to pull back when I get frustrated if people aren't like super loyal to being committed to being every week, because I'm like, that's actually part of my DNA. It's just hanging out with family every Saturday night. So there's never, I almost, it wasn't a one to the other, but it almost was. Like the family one had sort of rolled up a bit, but yeah. So I just, it's, I don't minimise it. It's still a commitment to be there all the time, but I don't miss my Saturday nights because my Saturday nights, whenever something I chose what to do, it was always a family thing. Interesting. But other people, I think they really miss having the Saturday nights for other stuff. But anyway, I remember my cousins and I, we made up puggle plays.
Yeah.
We would all have our puggles. We had a purple one, a green one, and a blue one. Mine was the navy blue one. It was actually quite close to the Salubrious couch.
Oh, it's a Salubrious
was
puggle.
A navy blue puggle.
I had a toy of, what was the platypus's name from the Sydney Olympics?
Oh,
the red one?
Was it Ollie?
Oh,
or was that something else?
Sid. Ollie, Sid and Millie.
And Fatso.
That was and Fatso was
Fatso the wombat. It's a Roy She thing.
Yeah.
But was that a real one or did they make that up?
Was it a kookaburra?
They made it up.
No, it was a kookaburra, a echidna, and a platypus.
Yeah, that's right.
Were they the mascots?
I'm looking up.
I think it was Ollie,
hey,
Millie,
look, I'm
and
just
Sid.
really feeling quite proud of myself that I had one of those names because the Olympics is not my thing.
Odd, Sid, Millie, and Lizzie. So I think there's a frill neck lizard as well.
Yeah, but that
yes.
was I think the frill neck lizard was the Paralympics one.
Oh, I think you're right. Yeah, you are right.
From my memory.
You are spot on.
Yes.
Yeah, so Ollie, Sid, and Millie were for the Summer Olympics.
A Sid toy.
And then Lizzie was for the Summer Paralympics.
Yeah.
Frill neck lizard.
Yeah. Anyway.
They're pretty cool looking, actually.
Yeah.
And you had the platypus, the red one, like you
I
said.
had the red one. I think it was Sid.
Sorry if everyone's listening. I will probably be doing a lot of coughing in this episode.
Just testing, making sure the compressors work.
Yeah, very pleasant. Fee, you said just before you came you had a few issues with your cats.
Oh, do you really want me to tell that story?
Yeah.
One of my little putters, it's a cat thing. If they eat too quick, they might just regurgitate their food, and it's not. They don't call it vomit. It's actually regurgitated because it's pretty much what's gone in just comes out. And I was sharing that it was my fault because I tried to give them little wormy tablets this morning, and he got a bit excited. And anyway, because I put them in a treat. Yeah. Anyway, and this little one, he's our oldest, Shiro Kuro. He's a tuxie if you're into cat colours, which means a tuxedo cat, which means he's black and white. So like when you look at him, he's black and he's got the little white down the front, so he looks like he's wearing a tuxedo. So they call them tuxedo cats. Not the first cat we ever had. We had Bella for many years before that, but after she passed away, we only ever had one cat. And then when we got Shiro, then we got more cats after that. But he's the oldest, and Shiro Kuro means black and white, or actually white and black in Japanese. Yeah. So he's Shiro, and yeah. Shiro
didn't have the best morning.
Food-wise.
Yes.
Yeah. So
shout out to the sensitive stomachs out there.
That's right.
That's why I'm probably in that, but I asked the question. So
yeah. So anyway, he will be fine. He's not actually sick. Like Braden was lovely. I said something about cat spew, cleaning up cat spew, and he's like, "Is he all right?" I'm like, "No, he's not sick. He just had a moment." So yeah. Which is he hasn't done it for a while. So I used to sort of preempt. Like anyway.
Are you setting yourself up to become a crazy cat lady? Is that what you're planning?
Well,
I don't think
I feel like the definition of crazy cat lady needs to be just lady and cats. So the addition of Saidi keeps me safe. I don't know. Crazy cat family?
Yeah.
Perhaps. Yeah. Okay. My friend Mel, you guys know, who used to come to Soli's, is still a really good friend. She had a theory which I loved, and it worked for me until it didn't anymore. I'll tell you the theory. She said if you can have the number of people in the household can be, now hang on, she used to say it really succinctly and I'm stuffing it up. The person in the household, then like one more cat, you had to have like more than one extra cat to be crazy cat family. So
you could have three.
She lives by herself and has 2 cats. Okay. So she's like, I'm not a crazy cat lady because I've only got 2 cats, but if I had 3, then I would be a crazy cat lady. Yeah. And so if 2 people live in the house, she can have 3. And so after Shiro, we relatively quickly adopted 2 more. So for quite some time we had 3. And she'd be like, well, I'm okay, Fee, and you're okay. I'm like, all right,
okay.
that's good.
Yep.
But then life moved on, and now we can't keep that rule anymore.
So you have succeeded in fulfilling the definition of crazy
Mel's
cat lady.
definition.
Is the crazy
But my
cat lady from The
definition
Simpsons?
is it must be only one person.
She from The Simpsons.
I
The
don't
crazy
know.
cat lady that
I
walks
just-
around throwing cats at people. I think that's from The Simpsons,
Ooh,
isn't
maybe.
it? Yeah.
I don't know. It's such a meme. It's,
Yeah.
it's everywhere.
Yeah.
The whole thing. But then there's people who really it's like other terms over the years that have been derogatory, and then people have owned them.
Yeah.
Like people own it. People go, yeah, I'm a crazy cat lady. Love it.
Yeah, I do that with like douchebag.
Yeah. Okay.
Now you own it.
Yeah, I own it, bro. Everyone calls me that now. I own it.
Yeah.
I'm proper DB.
Anyway, do we want to introduce our
I was
guest?
going to say.
Yes, welcome, Brandon.
Welcome back.
Welcome
We
back.
can't do the trick. We can't do the sneaky thing for either of you anymore because you've both done your chip lunches now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have to get another host on and sneak them.
Well, we haven't done Ethan yet.
haven't done Ethan.
Oh,
Yes.
that's right. You haven't.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That'll be like, can he have more parts than me?
Well, part of that, is the long lost episode.
Yes.
First one that Ethan and I ever did. We talked about how we became Christians.
Well, we all three of us did in the first episode.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, but we did briefly.
yeah. It was more of a yeah.
Well, we were mainly talking about high school, I think.
That's right. I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do remember that one. My gosh, that's
Yeah.
Yep.
No, you've listened to that one, have you? Fee?
Yeah.
Okay.
When I went back, I was saying to Braden earlier, so I've been keeping up for a little while, but I jumped in and I thought I want to listen to the most recent ones because that gives you the opportunity then to say to someone, hey, like I listened to your episode, and it can be a thing. Like you can do that with an older one, but it's a lot easier with the sort of newer ones. So what I do is I keep up to date, and then if I've got time, and then I go back.
Yep.
So if I might listen to 2 in a week, and I'll go back. And I started going back in reverse order, and then I realized there's a couple of part 2s, and I'm like, I'm not going to listen to the part 2 before the part 1, so I skipped. So actually, I just remembered I listened to Lee's this week.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah, I'd already listened to part 1, and I listened to part 2 of Lee's this week because I'd listened to Catherine's some time ago, and I'd listened to Tim's also, Tim Ponder. So
Yep.
so I've now completed the established trilogy.
Very well established. Yes, welcome back, Fee. part 4, I think it is. I think you're the person
So
with the most
part
amount
3
of parts.
is part 2's 1 and 2 are fine. Part 3 was beefs, so that was
Beefs.
Kath, Chris.
Oh yeah.
So what's part 4? What's
The future.
the future?
I don't know.
Ooh, yeah,
I'm not sure.
we're just stepping out.
Cat-
into
Back to the
unknown.
future.
Yes.
Oh, Back to the Future. That's not bad.
Yeah.
I was just going to say Cats, like the musical.
Yeah. I've got actually, I thought we might talk about my putters. I've got my little cat bracelet on today.
Yeah. What does it say?
It's
Cats.
the initials of my putters. Yeah. And yeah. So one day when I was sitting, this is the first one that I made when the girls were doing Tay-Tay bracelets, and then I started making Sorrow or Jesus beads, and then people were giving me ones. So there's a mixture there. Yeah. So SK, Shirakuro, MB for Manny Bear. That's a long story. Do you want me to tell you Manny Bear's full name? Manny
tell the full
Mitsumeru
name.
Maple Bowie Bear.
Oh my gosh.
I'm trying to think. I sent Beck a reel on Instagram the other day of someone who works at a vet was going through the names of all the
Different animal.
different animals they had in their system.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that
and
would
she
be
was just going through the craziest
awesome.
names.
Well-
It was very funny. I'll send it to you. It's
My
just
vet thinks
like
I'm crazy
grape.
because we've got a real mixture. Because
Yeah.
like we had, so like Shirakuro,
Yeah.
and then, so Manny is Manny Mitsumeru Maple Bowie Bear because we were trying, like he came with the name Manny,
Yeah.
and anyway, we were thinking of giving him a name that we chose. But it took us a long time, and I really liked Mitsumeru, Mitsu for short, but it never really sort of stuck. And then like Sadie also liked Bear, but by the time we
Bear.
sort of settled on Bear, Manny had sort of stuck. So now I call him Manny Bear or Manny.
Well,
He
everything.
gets everything. But Mitsumeru was one of the names, and I wanted to call him Bowie, but Sadie said no. Because he's got like he's a tabby and he's got that beautiful black around his eyes, so he's like David Bowie with the eye makeup.
Wow.
Yeah,
You call them putters. How do you spell that?
PUDDA.
Oh, you put an A in there.
Yeah,
Every time you say it makes me think of pudding.
Oh, well,
Too
so
much pud.
there's a lovely story. That was so our first cat Bella. She came with the name Bella, and at that time we didn't really think of changing it. And so we called her Bella, but we never picked Bella, and it wasn't really a name we would have picked. Not that we don't like Bella, but it just wasn't. Yeah, and it was very generic because every second cat's name's Bella and every second dog's name's Bella as well. Anyway, I was like, no, I'm not going to go with Bella. And we also have a one of Sadie's cousins' kids was Bella as well. So there's a whole bunch of no, we're not going to. But so she was the Tweety and Sylvester.
Yeah,
I taught her to a putty tart.
Yeah, yeah.
So she was the putty tart, and then it just became Putta.
Oh.
And that was actually what we called her. So she did not respond. Like Bella sounds a bit like Putta, but she knew her name was Putta.
Yeah.
And Sadie I would talk about Putta. We hardly she was only Bella when she went to the vet. So she was Putta. So none of our cats now get called Putta, but they're the Putta cats. So we still the name is still there in sort of reference. And
get sick of saying the same name 100 million times. You end up giving them nicknames.
Mm.
I call Ivy Ivan or Ivo more than I call her Ivy. But it's Ivo Campo is the joke.
Like Ivan Campo, the football player.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I was going to say, who's Ivo Campo? A football player.
He's a football player.
And then
he had this like massive bushy hair.
Oh.
And he'd like run around and it's like streaming behind him. It's pretty funny.
Did he play for Bolton?
He did play for
but
Bolton.
I was like,
he played for Real Madrid and Bolton.
Just such a random
Ivan
mid-2000s
Campo. Yeah.
Bolton player.
Shout out to Michael Greaves, who is a Bolton supporter.
And not a cat fan, so he will not want to listen to this.
He'll get there.
Yeah, so then we had Lottie. Anyway, there's a bit of a story. Maddie and Lottie, we got very close together because we were talking to a lady in a rescue and we were trying to find a good match for little Shiro, and she didn't really have one. And then so we looked at other rescues. The week we adopted Manny, she rang me up and she's like, we've got a little one that's come in and we think she might be a good fit. And I was like, I paused and she's like, you've adopted another one, haven't you? I'm like, yes, I have. And then that's a funny part of the story because then I said to Sadie, could we, what would you think about having, how did I can't remember how I phrased it, but the answer was maybe. And it was the wrong answer. I should have said no. Well, I mean, he loves them too. But
most of the time maybe means
yeah,
no.
Yeah. Could we have a third cat? Could we have 3 cats? And I thought he'd go, no. And he went, maybe. I'm like, cool, let's go meet this cat.
Yeah.
And he also fell in love with her and she is delightful. So yeah. But she came with the name Lottie. And again, I have a list on my phone. People laugh. I'm like, do you want to see all my cat names? Because and there was a few other options for her, but then Lottie just was it. So we've got Shirokuro, Manny, Lottie, and then the next 2 little pair, we did rename them. One was called Frankie, which is weird because Frankie was Sadie's nickname with Francesconi at school. Yeah. They used to call him Frankie. So I'm like, we're not calling our cat Frankie. That's weird. Yeah. And there was Frankie and Charlie girl. So it was a little girl called Charlie and a little boy called Frankie. And I've also, there's family connections with a girl, Frankie. So, and everybody would be like, well, Charlie and Frankie, they're now, I don't know if they've always been, but they're gender fluid names, I suppose, going away.
Yeah. Billy.
Yeah,
like Billy. A girl name. Yeah. More than it's a boy name.
Yeah. So we were very motivated to change those names.
Yeah.
And so then when we went, and also, Shirokuro is lovely. He's like the one who will connect more quickly with little ones when they come. So he's just a good big brother. Anyway, he's very cute. And so he was really connecting with them. I thought they need Japanese names. So they're Mika, which means beautiful fragrance. And I'm going to definitely drop Sadie in the crazy cat dad category here because the reason for that is he would just pick her up and go, she smells so nice. She smells really good. So then I looked up different names. Anyway, so she's got really, really soft fur. So it's really cool. She's very fluffy. She's a little princess. So that's Mika, which is also Japanese. And then the little boy that we got at the same time, who they're not brother and sister, but they were bonded in care. So we adopted them together. His name is Hoshi, which is not Koshi. I might have actually had second thoughts when I named Hoshi if I realised that, because you say Hoshi. Did you call it Koshi after like David
named him
Koch?
after David
No,
Koch.
I did not name my cat after David Koch. Hoshi means star in Japanese, and he's mellowed a little bit, but he was always in the middle of everything, star of the show. So that's why we called him that. So they've got their little Japanese names, and then our last little one came with the name Rory, and since then, some of the girls in youth were, and still some are, into a series of books, the Cat Warriors books, and love having. Anyway, they used to. I've lost the word. What do you call it when you like play act stuff?
Yeah.
There's a word for it, isn't there? Anyway, they all had Cat Warrior names and all this sort of stuff. It was really, really cool. Yeah, and I like one of my ins with those beautiful girls was they gave me a Cat Warrior name, and I'm not allowed to tell you what it is.
Oh,
No.
But Rory
See
got
if I can.
Lion's Roar, and he is ginger, so it all sort of he's a little
Oh, that's good, man.
he's my little gingy one. So he is Rory.
So how many cats in total are we at here?
But 6.
Okay.
You got to count along.
So it's a 1-to-3 ratio in your house.
Yeah, so I don't know. We are crazy.
Yep. All right, enough cat chat. Fine.
Yep, cool. I
it's
couldn't
okay.
talk about Shiro without telling you all the names.
No,
that's
that's all right.
not fair.
I'm not sorry. I wasn't being critical.
I know.
I
It's
do love
fine.
people's different approaches to pet names, though. Like some people go
That's cool.
real out. Like some people like Pancake.
Yeah.
And I at the dog park, I've met all kinds of like Limo was
Limo?
the sausage dog, which was super funny.
Oh,
That makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah,
That's
but
cute.
then you've got like people who are like Greg. Or like, you know what I mean? Like
Craig.
Craig.
Yeah.
Do you know
See,
what I mean?
I wouldn't have gone like yeah, which is why we sort of tried to change Manny, because it's actually a person's name.
I've always
so
gone
much.
people names.
Yeah,
My cat was called Joseph.
no, that's
So I
very
named
cool.
him that when I think I was 8.
Joseph.
Yeah. So
All my pets have been named after something related to motor racing.
yeah, well, all my parents' dogs, animals have been named after Liverpool players.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so
Aw.
all of them are. So we had Kenny Dalglish.
Kenny Dalglish. Yep.
Now they've got Bobby, who's our cat, who's Bobby Firmino,
Firmino.
but that is a girl, so you had to go with the Bobby
yeah.
is a girl's name, and
Bobby
now
with
they've
an
got
I.
Alison
Oh, yeah.
Ali
For the goalkeeper.
The goalkeeper,
Current goalkeeper.
again a girl. So trying to
No.
find the ones.
I was going to say, you're giving
Stevie
yourself
for-
trouble if you get female pets and you're trying to name them after male sport.
Well, yeah, that's Stevie. Stevie is Jai's dog, named after Steven Gerrard.
Yep.
So,
I never knew that.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of the greatest Liverpool players ever. Yep.
yeah. So
Oh, okay, that does make
you gotta
sense.
keep-
I
and
just thought that
Ivy's-
Stevie came
Ivy's
from
middle
something.
name is technically Jota because he scored the first goal for Liverpool since after we bought her. So
Oh, really?
yeah, if you look her
Diogo
up,
Jota.
her vet bills, it says Ivy Jota.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
That's,
yes.
That's cool.
I had a ginger cat originally called Nelson. Who's named after
Nelson is excellent.
Nelson Piquet. He was a Brazilian driver. And then we got 2 at the same time. So my sister was just called Buster. That was a pretty cool name, actually.
Yeah.
And then Murray. It's just named after Murray Walker, like the famous Formula
I
1
was thinking Murray
commentator.
Wiggle.
The
No,
lady
not
that we rescue from has 2 little cats at the moment that she's, trying to find homes for. And one's called Lulu and the other one's called Murray.
No.
She's got many more than that, but they're the 2 that are the little ones. But
And
she's
poor Murray got run over by a car.
Aw.
So then I got another one, I think on my 16th birthday.
I thought you meant the
What
race car driver got run over by a car.
No.
Jeez.
Well,
I
that has
didn't know
happened. But yeah, and then Mika, who's named after Mika Häkkinen, which is a
Yeah.
Formula 1 driver.
That's almost Mika.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
And
That's
how do you spell
Finnish.
that?
Mika.
That's how I spell Mika.
No, well.
But I say Mika.
Okay.
And that's true. Like, if you actually did the proper Japanese pronunciation of some of these names, it would be different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Shirakuro is actually, I'm not going to do it right, but if you listen to like the, audio on Google Translate or whatever, it's like Shirokuro.
Do you have like are you drawn to like Japanese culture or something like that? Because you've got a lot of Japanese, or you just like Japanese names.
Yeah. There's a few little points of contact. Yeah. I love lots of things about Japanese culture. I didn't study Japanese at school or anything. My parents lived in Japan for a little while.
That's right.
So there was a connection there and I got to go over there. Out of when I worked for Join Constructions, got really interested in architecture and things at the time, which is fun because I get to chat with Joey a little bit about that. And through that, got interested in the whole like Japanese sort of side of that sort of thing, and the whole wabi sabi and like what do they call it? There was that design trend, Japandi, like Scandi and Japanese.
Oh, really?
Like
Okay.
So that people talk about Scandi. I think, would you heard of Scandi? Like like the whole Scandinavian style design. But Japandi is like a bit of a combo, and I think that actually is a bit, before I knew that word, that's a bit of my sort of style, what I like. So I love that sort of thing.
Yeah, cool.
So probably that was why that was in the mix. But if you look at the list of names that we had for Shiro, there was everything under the sun, and that was just the one that stuck. And once we picked a Japanese name, then we went along with that a little bit. Yeah, but
well, as we said, it's part 4.
It is, so we need to get on with things.
There'll be a part 5. Look out. One thing that we did want to hit on, and you said that, you actually said this previously, is we didn't really talk about you going to Bible college.
Yeah.
So
I thought that was a bit of an omission because it was like 8 years.
Was it 8 years? Was
8 years, yeah. So right. I did like my degree entirely part-time.
Part-time, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll go, let's say, why did you think it might be a good idea to go to Bible college? Did you have someone encourage you, or you're just like, I may as well do it?
Yeah, definitely. It fits the mould of everything else. Yeah, so...
you have to be asked to do something? Is that what
I was like, why don't you do it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't remember specific conversations, but there was a bit of a progression. So I have mentioned, I'm pretty sure, in another podcast about going into Newtown, into Moore College, to the evening classes. There was a group of us that did that, and that was while I was still doing my degree at Sydney Uni, which I dropped out of. And at the time... So I originally deferred, and then I went back, and then I stopped doing it. And through that whole time, we were doing the evening classes. And when I left it, I then went to SMBC. So it was like I was continuing studying, but had decided that I didn't want to pursue the stuff I was doing in my arts degree anymore. So that was a natural progression because I do love studying and I do love learning, and and that was something that I was encouraged to do. So
what did you
also like, so there's a few people that I knew, like at the time, Stu was partway through his, so he studied at SMBC and at Moore. Tim Baldwin, who I was working with at the time, so there were people that I was doing lots of ministry with who were at college. I was like, why not? That's an amazing opportunity. So it wasn't like I'm going into this to do something, but I was already deeply involved in youth ministry. So just it was like which is, I don't know how common it is now. Actually, Braden, you might be able to tell because you've like been at college more recently. The mix of people who are going vocationally and the people who are going just to say, as a Christian, I want to expand my knowledge.
Yeah, I'd say at Moore, because it's like you could only do things full time and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more directed in terms of like if you want to be ordained as an Anglican minister, you have to study there.
Yeah.
So I would say first year we had quite a lot of mix. So like you have a lot of people who will take a year off work and do 1 year at Moore, and it means you walk away with a certificate or something.
There's a qualification.
There's a qualification you get after doing 1 year full time that a lot of people do, again, just to feel more qualified and maybe go into volunteer ministry positions, having done that study. So like we had a great person in my year who did quite a lot of mission to truck drivers because he was a truck driver. He was a lovely dude. And so he took a year off doing that to just come and get trained and feel more confident in his Bible knowledge, and then just go back to being a truck driver and trying to evangelize the people around him. So there was quite a few people like that in first year, or maybe a few people who were whose partners were studying it more, so they did the first year together.
Yeah,
there was
that
quite a lot
happened
of
at
that.
SMBC as well.
Or a few people, who, and yeah, I'd say there was a lot of people who did the year. Once you get further into college, it's obviously a bigger commitment in terms of time and full time and things. So obviously, a lot more people are planning to have that as their full time job going forward, or be a missionary. There's or stuff like that. So definitely in the first year, there's a lot more people who were there to get trained and then maybe go back into secular workplace and do their thing.
Yep.
There's actually, now that I'm thinking about it, there's actually quite a few people who kind of took, like, I guess you'd call it a gap year, except you're studying the whole time, so it's not really a gap year, is it? Took a year off to really focus on study and getting equipped in that kind of way, and then going back to the workforce in terms of secular or maybe part-time ministry. There's quite a few people that did that. But mostly in the early years.
Sorry to talk over the topic.
No.
Did you have the same intention with that then?
I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I just knew it would be good. I was teaching high school scripture as well. So, like, any sort of study was going to be, beneficial. Because I didn't want to. I decided that I wanted ministry to be the main game, but I didn't know what form that would take. So I was teaching high school scripture, doing lots of youth ministry, and then during the course of while I was studying for a period of time was like a 1 day a week student pastor with a number of other people at Gymea Anglican. So that was sort of the journey then. So it was, bit of school, bit of church, bit of study, and there was a period of time then when I was waitressing as well, because that was to get a wage. It was a regular sort of wage and all that sort of stuff. And some money. It's always a good thing, especially because my parents moved to Japan. So I was out of home at that point. So all those things. So didn't really know, but loved it. And SMBC did have a particular mission focus as well. So it was lovely because people would sort of talk about who they were going to go on mission to, and we say we're going to go on mission to youth because that is cross-cultural, as Stu will say. It is very cross-cultural sometimes. So really important to think about that opportunity. So it was a good environment in that way to be thinking about, how do you minister to those who are not the same as yourself. And obviously there's levels of difference, but that was it. That was different. And I think for me as well, because having had, which we did talk about, going to Dane Bank and, going to a girls' school for high school, then ministering to teenagers who went and an independent, like a private girls' school that had a church focus. I won't say focus. It was church based. We talked about that. And then teaching scripture in a state co-ed high school and ministering to kids at youth that were there. It is a different culture, very cross-cultural. So I couldn't import a lot of my school experience into like what they were particularly going through in a lot of ways. Not that one was better or worse, they were just very different. So that was really helpful to be in a space where people were deliberately thinking about how do you engage well with people who are different to you. And SMBC offered part-time study at a time where more did not at all. I know they do a little bit.
You can do first year part-time now.
Yeah. So, but even SMBC,
that's where you
they did have a rule that you did have to do a full-time year, but I broke that rule.
So you obviously, you went to SMBC.
I went to SMBC and I did a Bachelor of Theology. You had to complete it within 8 years, and it took me 8 years. I did that. I did drop down a subject there. So Sadie and I got married while I was at SMBC. And I remember going and sitting, usually I would sit with the principal, but for some reason I think he might have been on a mission trip possibly. Anyway, I sat with one of the vice principals to chat through my course of study at the point where I wanted to drop down. And I wanted to keep doing, like they thought I should drop altogether for the period of time when I was getting married, and I wanted to keep doing one subject. Anyway, we had an interesting discussion about that. I said, I can do it. But it did lead to a hilarious deal that Sadie and I made, which was we went to the Cook Islands for our honeymoon, which it has surfing. I don't know if it's particularly good surfing, but there is surfing available. And there was at one point the potential, I don't know if somebody else mentioned it or somebody, but there was the possibility of Sadie taking his surfboard. And I said, if you take your surfboard, I'm taking my college notes.
What a threat.
He did not take his surfboard. I did not take my college notes. Yep.
Wow. What's like the enduring thing you took out of going to college, do you think?
Oh, wow.
One thing, you have to say one thing.
Well, I appreciate, the thing is, I appreciate, like, so, and we can talk about this later, but Fee's in our community group. And every time I have a question about the Bible, I'm like, Fee, what do you think? Because she's been to college and she's been studying, and you know the Bible so well. So that's what I mean. It's just like, what do you, the reason I asked that question, I suppose, is, why do you think it was valuable?
Because there may be Christians out there who, through personal Bible reading habits and listening to sermons and being in community groups, really just put their all into that and get the big picture. But I feel like that might be quite uncommon, and it was not the case for me. So, just having that dedicated course of thinking through God's word in a really systematic way. We've talked recently, it's been quite topical for us about the way we preach at Solis generally, not in every instance, is by working through a book of the Bible.
Yep.
That wasn't always the case when I was growing up, and there was a period of time where one particular pastor was very topical. And again, that's not wrong. We do that sometimes. We have our gap weeks. And I'd done Bible study. I'd done some good Bible studies in that you'd have good material. There was some that was written by people at church. Anthony Douglas, who's going to be speaking on Week Away, wrote some beautiful Bible study material that I remember really appreciating. We used to use Little Matthias books, that sort of stuff. So it wasn't like I hadn't had access to good Bible teaching. But just, just that thing where you're all there. And also in any context, in a church context, you've got different levels of experience, different levels of maturity, different levels of focus. Like when you're at college, everybody's there for that reason.
Wanting to do it.
So all those things, I suppose, created this environment where, you go to morning tea and you'd just be buzzing and talking about what you want to do. And again, we have a beautiful thing at Solis with our meals around the gatherings, particularly when the meal's after, obviously, where we can talk about that. But I got to be honest, sometimes it's a slog, and sometimes if you try and talk about the sermon at dinner, you get the vibe of nobody else wants to. Not always.
It's less intentional sometimes.
Yeah, whereas
sometimes someone just wants to talk about what happened in their week or their day, or
and that's not bad.
And but when you're at Bible college, you have a bunch of people who are there for that particular reason. Yeah, I guess.
And most people love doing that. So, morning tea, chatting it through. I drove in and out to Burwood, so at different times was travelling in with different people, and you'd have these amazing chats in the car about what you like. that was just really, really wonderful. And the other thing, actually, and this is probably my brain still working, if I thought of this first, I would have said this and not the other stuff. So this is the most important thing, was that, and, you know, do not in any way want to speak against going to college full time. That is some people's path. Being at college part-time meant I wasn't doing 10 subjects at once. I was only ever doing 2 subjects. So my brain wasn't overly full. I think that's one of the dangers of full-time. You've got so much, and people talk about, like, you know, just get it all in and then spend the rest of your ministry life sort of getting out. One of my lecturers talked about having a little book, and every time a lecturer mentions something that's over and above that you're definitely not going to have time to, I just put it in the book. Or like when you got things that spark your interest, just put it in the book, and then, you know, when you leave college, just like work your way through your book. That was great advice. I didn't do it, but anyway.
Like, I don't know how much time you have on the other side either.
I know. And also I was part-time, so it wasn't so much. But so there was, like, you know, I'd be really focusing in on two things. I'm probably overstating this, but what it felt like was that every week I would learn something, and every week that thing that I had learned would become helpful in a ministry situation.
Interesting. Yeah.
And like there was one period of time like, God, you are really showing me that this is the path that, you know, that you are putting me on at the moment. Like, you
feel,
you know, sometimes you feel that more clearly than others. But yeah, so the enduring thing was God just used that stuff. And like there was times, you know, I'd just be at youth and a conversation would come up like, this is what I was talking about Bible college this week. This is what we learned. And so often that happened, that I think that is the enduring, beautiful thing. So that's why I would like say to people, if you have the opportunity, and it could just like, you know, we at church now have Berea, like that in itself. I mean, it is helpful for people that we do it in the intensives. I feel like the weekly thing that we have done in the past would help with that sort of side of things more, like you're learning a little bit coming up, but it's still with the intensives, you're still learning stuff, you're thinking things through. But yeah, if somebody has the opportunity to study further, I would never discourage them from doing that. I think it can only deepen, you know, your thoughts about stuff and just the big picture stuff. So particularly I've spoken with lots of people over the years about an Old Testament lecturer I had for first year. Stephen Wren was his name. I discovered partway into having him as my lecturer and knowing him that he had been a teacher previously, and suddenly I just went, oh, that makes so much sense. Because, you know, some lecturers are very adept in their subject, but the conveying it to a class is perhaps a little bit dry.
Communication is a different skill.
Yeah, exactly. And he was the best communicator. And it's so funny, like of all the subjects in first year, Old Testament possibly would have been the one that I would have been like, maybe church history on the opposite of Stu. But that would have been the one that I probably would have looked forward to less, perhaps. But it was hands down my favourite subject because he was so engaging and just he was so excited about stuff and he just passed that on. So that was actually really lovely because at the time that he was doing that, I was teaching scripture, and when I first started teaching high school scripture, my rule with myself was think about what your Year 9 scripture teacher did and do the opposite because it was incredibly dry and unengaging, and I was a Christian at the time and hated it. Like it was not great. What
a difference a good teacher makes, eh? Like we've talked about that before, I think, on this podcast.
And the attitude, it was very much like at no level, like, she was just doing her job and wanted to put us in our place. And it was looking back, it was really sad because there were girls in my class that were not Christians. So I had the mitigating factor of being involved in church and people who were excited about Jesus there, but some of them didn't, which is, shame. But she was all about the content, and getting us in the exams and stuff. So but then Stephen Wren was somebody. That's the way to teach stuff.
Yeah. Do you have any similar reflections around college, or like do you agree or disagree with what Fee's saying, Brad?
Yeah, I think I think your statement of what a difference a teacher makes is true all throughout school,
Yes.
in general.
Yeah.
Like I loved music a lot, but I had a horrendous music teacher in year 12 to the point where it became one of my least favorite things to do.
Yeah,
Wow.
And I had a really good art teacher, so it was one of my favorite subjects. So like I think things change there. Bible college is tricky because sometimes you have people who are so smart. And they're so smart and they're so deep into something, and it's like you're thankful to God that they have had the time to put that much thought and effort into things. But then communicating is a different skill,
Definitely.
like we mentioned.
Yeah.
So like, we have there's a couple of lectures at college that I'm amazed at how gifted at communicating they are. Does that make sense? Like you feel like that they have this really incredible knowledge that they could communicate to so many different levels.
Right.
So like there are certain lectures where you're like, you could give a lecture to doctors, people doing a master's, people doing a bachelor, people doing certificate, people in high school or people in primary school. And I feel like you could give this lecture at any of those levels and they kind of move it around.
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
And you're like,
accordingly. Yeah.
and so like they'll be doing it at some level and someone will ask a question that's way up there and they'll answer it up here, but then someone will ask a question like 4 steps back, like, what about this? And it's like, oh, cool. And they just move it around. And I think it helps you think about the way that you communicate.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially in things. And I think that's the helpful thing for me with youth ministry and stuff. And something I experienced later on was like I did a sermon at college, and it was funny. I was really calm during it and like purposely went through and did stuff really calmly, and then had a conversation with someone afterwards and they were like, oh, that was really boring because they were all engaged. And I was like, yeah, I know, because when I preach on a Friday, I have to be calm because everyone in the room is going mental. And if I'm not calm, they'll go mental.
Right.
And so I was used to doing it one way, but then you'd learn over time to like read a room a little bit, I guess. And I'm sure
That's
you would
really
have had that
interesting.
experience in scripture. Like you walk into a room and you kind of figure out what's going to work. And like it's not always going to work, but like you kind of figure out the way that you're going to do things, and there's more than one way to do things.
Yeah. Well, I think I said one time when Joel was talking about scripture at Gymea High,
Yeah.
like Joel's scripture class was like a Bible study. It was like
Yeah.
whereas there were other ones that were completely different.
Yeah.
And so, you had to change your style. Like, I mean, the content was there. I mean, I taught scripture before there was a designated curriculum.
Yeah.
So the scripture board very helpfully, were they reviewed what I did, like they knew my content. So it wasn't, we went completely rogue or anything.
Yeah.
But at the same time I had the flexibility to do that. So like the very first thing I would do when we started Year 7 class was work through the Jesus Beads, Colours of Life. And some classes, nobody ever took 5 weeks to do it, but some classes were close to.
Yeah.
Other classes, we would do that for 2 terms.
Yeah.
And it was one class a fortnight, so it's not
Yeah.
crazy, but we would, and I would just take the time it took.
Yeah.
And that was like, when you have your core and then you've got your electives.
Yeah.
In my mind, that was how it worked.
Yeah.
There was the core, and then
If you got
there
through
were the
that,
electives. And sometimes it was because it was hard, to get through, and we were getting distractions and so forth. At other times it was because they just had so many questions.
Yeah.
So there's different reasons
Yeah.
why that happened. So I think that is super important. And same with you. I think also like all those experiences gave me a real passion. And I mean, I think, you can always get better at this, but of listening to something and trying to, when I'm in the position of speaking to people, be aware that not everybody knows stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So this is a silly pet peeve. We had a song that Johnny Baldwin wrote while we were at Gymea Anglican Church, and it was called Propitiation. Because he had been very excited by learning what that word meant, the there was a line where it said, Jesus, our propitiation. And that we started singing that song regularly at a time where I was had the role of service leading sometimes at Gymea. And every time we sang that song, I would explain what it meant. Yeah. And people, it became one of those little jokes. It was a little bit like, you know, this is the most important thing we do, read the Bible, where we had to pull back on that a little bit because people started going, you say that all the time. Yes, it's helpful, but not every time. So I would always explain that and people would sort of say, that's funny. But I'm like, no, because if there's somebody in this church and like, you know, you could be a Christian for many, many, many years and never have heard the word propitiation. Yeah. Probably just hang on Bible College, whatever. Or I don't even know what the context was.
I don't think I knew the meaning of it, but I'm like, it means something about Jesus doing something good.
Yeah.
I think it's important. I think the insight that you have, it's important to never, like I've found that never to, I have a core memory of the first time I went to church on a Sunday after being at youth for a long time and being like, what is this? I don't know when to sit up and stand up. And I feel like everyone else knows the words to these things and I don't know. And I just remember the plate getting passed around. Oh, yeah. And being like, I don't have any money. What am I going to do?
Is there food in this plate?
Well, no. It was more like everyone else is putting money in there. I don't have any money. What am I going to do? I have no idea what I'm going to do.
You know what?
Like that's what I try and remember is those feelings.
Yes.
Of being like, like especially doing music, you're like, oh, well, like people know what we're doing. It's like, no, you need to lead them because there might be someone there being like, everyone else seems to know what they're doing. And I don't know what I'm doing. Like that's a very real thing.
Yeah, totally.
For people who haven't been to church before.
And I was probably in year 8 when I first started coming to church. So I don't really remember that being a particular big thing for me. But I have a few cousins that have married people of the Catholic persuasion and have been to Catholic weddings and have been to Catholic baptisms and stuff. Yeah. And that's when I get that, like, you guys, like, you're standing up, you're sitting down, the priest will say something and I'll be like, and the first time I was in that, I came away very frustrated and disappointed that they had done that. I'm like, I'm a Christian and I felt so like unable to participate. Yeah. I'm like, why? Like it was so much. There's the club and there's the outsiders. And I suppose some denominations more lean towards that in terms of who's allowed to participate in different parts of their gatherings and so forth. So, you know, that sort of fits a bit of a mould potentially. But yeah, it was interesting. And what was the other one you said about the standing up and sitting down? Passing the plate.
Passing the plate, yeah.
I recently went to Woman for the first time at MCC and it was delightful, but I had no expectation that there would be a plate. Well, it was a little, like, I think, passed around, and I don't carry cash on me.
I'm pretty sure I put a guitar pick in it. I'm not lying. I'm pretty sure.
Because you just felt like you had to do something. I just felt
like I had to put something in, and I was like,
"Oh, did you like hide what was in your hand though?
Yeah.
Because it was a bag.
But it made like a noise. Like you could tell if something was getting dropped in there.
Yeah. Although if you had a note, the note would just get shoved in.
True. I was putting in
coins. The coins would go.
Guys,
anyway. That's a moment where you're like, you feel so. I'm like, you know, here am I. You know, this was this year and I felt so uncomfortable. I'm like, this is stupid, Fiona. But there's that moment where you're like, oh my gosh, like, that's a human response to like, I didn't expect this. I don't know, and I'm not prepared for it. Yeah. I don't want people to think that I'm rude,
and as people are more disconnected from church culture, like I think
it's less,
So I think that's really, really important to always make sure that we're bringing people along with us and trying to avoid things that would be unhelpful. Just saying, you know, I think that's something that I see people are very thoughtful when they are in the service leading role when we go through the confession. I think people, I really enjoy watching the way a service leader does that because everybody does a little bit differently, but I see, that person, they're doing this, they're doing that, they're doing that, they're helping us to do that together. And Stewie often when he's preaching will have something where he's applying it and he will talk about, you know, this is you know, particularly something that as Christians we will do, but if you're not a Christian, I want you to listen to this or see what's going on. Like, I think he uses that language sometimes, which is super helpful as well. So he's not shying away from saying something is particularly in the Bible for somebody who has already made a decision of faith. But he does that in a way that doesn't make somebody who's not a Christian feel outside of it, or left out or not included. I once was at a service with a guest speaker. I won't say any more than that because it'll narrow the pool, where the person got up and didn't read the room. It was a service where there was a number of guests there who were not Christians at all and were not regular churchgoers. And they got up and they spoke about a very well-known Bible passage, and they introduced it by saying, we all know this story.
Yeah.
And I just went, oh, and it made me so cranky because I'm like, no, never do that.
Yeah.
Never do that. You've just said, and the way they introduced it, we all know the story and we're all, I'm like, you've just told half the room, this is not for you.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard enough getting somebody who's not used to coming to church to engage in a sermon, and you've basically told them, you can shut down now because you don't know this story, this is not for you.
We have the special knowledge.
Yeah. But so I'm very passionate about those things, and they prick my ears, and I'm sure I'm definitely not perfect in it, but I'm very aware and try to be not falling into those things. So I think Bible college does that as well, because you know the stuff, but you can't. I suppose maybe some people come out of Bible college and they just want to talk like a college lecturer the rest of their life. Hopefully not, but unless you are a college lecturer.
And nothing helps you learn and grasp something better than teaching it to other people. So I think that's when you spoke about it's crazy the thing that would come up at college, and then I would go to youth group and have a conversation, or I would go to Bible study. It's like, yeah, that happens all the time, and that's the thing that helps you like put it all together, as well as like, oh wow, now I'm having this conversation in Bible study where this thing is actually crazy. It's all connected. Like it's this and this and this, and then you end up explaining that and having a discussion, and you're like, oh, now I understand it.
Yeah.
Way better. And
I was just, you were talking about, like, because you started this conversation around what's a good teacher, and I thought of there's the Feynman technique. Have you heard that? So it's
I've heard you mention it. I can't remember what it
is. Richard Feynman was a Nobel.
Fireman.
No, not Feynman. Sorry, Feynman. His last name's Feynman. But
that is not how I imagined it when you said that.
Yeah, okay. But he's a Nobel laureate in physics, but also like he was a master at demystifying complex topics. So he basically says like the essence of what he's saying is that if you can't teach it to a young child, you don't know it well enough, and you can't teach it. Which I thought was really cool. You know how you're saying you can teach at different levels. Yeah. But then there was a little bit there. It said Feynman's secret lane, understanding the true essence of a concept rather than merely just knowing its name. Yeah. And I think that's what sets apart the good teachers from the not as enjoyable teachers, is that it isn't just accumulating knowledge and then regurgitating it. It's understanding the true essence and the concept. And I think what you're saying there, Fee, is sometimes, even if you've got not a great teacher or not, but still being taught the Bible helps you actually grasp the true essence of what.
And how much more than anything else. I mean, you know, if you're learning, I don't know, engineering, how to build something, how to be a designer, like
music,
music. Maybe you can just get that, but like if we're teaching the Bible, we are beholden to do that in a way that gets people to grasp the concept, because I think it is one thing that is a sad thing about so I mean, more and more people are not biblically literate, but I think there's a certain generation of people who think they know the gospel and they don't, because it's been given to them like that and they haven't actually
the content
understood it. It's been like here's the names, here's the content. And look, there's two sides to that. You know, that person's, you know, the Holy Spirit's got to be working on their heart to help them understand it. We are blind without God opening our eyes. But sometimes, I think it's very, very important, and we should be very, very prayerful about whenever we're communicating the gospel, not to just make it be in, you know, little content modes, but actually what is really going on. Yeah,
and I think that's what I really appreciated about some lecturers as I got further into college, is the concepts get bigger and more, I don't want to say ethereal, I'm trying to think of...
theological.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the different the word I'm actually. Yeah, it was just like it's more out there. It's much more complex, and I think some lecturers really had the gift of being like, "Oh, this is why we're talking about it." Which we did instinct. We've been doing like instinct drivers and things about like the way your personality works and learning as type of teamwork stuff. And I'm really, really happy and excited to learn things when you give me a reason, but when you don't give me a clear line of delineation towards why I'm actually doing anything, that's when I'm like, nah. And so like I think some people really have a gift for being like, here's this really complicated thing, especially in Bible teaching. And this is why it's important in your ministry that if someone comes up to you and is talking about this is what's probably behind it. And you're like, oh,
that's cool.
That's why we've been talking about like the different, like the way sanctification works for 6 weeks. Like you're like, oh, okay. Like this is helping with that. And I think some people have that gift of being able to be like, no, this is how the puzzle pieces fit together. And you go, oh, cool. Yeah.
How good is that moment when you go, oh, there it is. Like,
it's just like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
No, that's very cool. Yeah. Should we move on to another topic?
Probably.
Because that was
very cool
really
to talk about.
Yeah, it was very cool.
Yeah, I'm glad
we spoke about you coming back to Soul Revival. We went to Kirk Place and things like that.
Yep.
You weren't part of the original launch team. Is that correct?
We went in at 30, so we were still around.
Yeah, you're still supporting and alongside. I remember you saying that.
But that was my we were doing the 2 churches and trying to work out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, why did you decide to commit to Soul Revival?
Oh, okay. Yep. So as time went on, there's probably heaps of things. Trying to be true to what actually it was rather than going back and saying with hindsight. I was at a church that was like a really healthy growing church, and I did say, I think in the last podcast, that they did then go through a horrible period, and that church actually doesn't exist anymore. It's very sad. But at the time I was there was a lot of stuff that's going that I couldn't fault it from the like, this is an amazing church, but it wasn't home. And like, we always say at Soul East, the way we do ministry is not the only way, but it makes sense to us. So it was a combination of that, and also just realising that the Christian relationships that God had given me there were not something that any issue with the church per se and how other things have been dealt with, they were not important enough to me to lose that longevity of ministry together. And and I was very, very blessed to be around for some of the moments where Soulies was being shaped. Not for every moment, but the shaping of Soulies and the values that it has now.
And you had input into that.
Yeah. And so, like, there was a part of me there. And, so I think there was a journey of like, if I'd been able to just go, leave your conscience behind, Fee, I never would have left. But there was a part of I was like, no, I feel like God has shown me something and made me take something seriously, and I need to get to the point where I'm not just here despite issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then there was the period like early on in Soulies where we went through, we were under ENC, and then we had to decide if we were going to pursue being an Anglican parish, or like, remember when we had to vote on all that stuff? Yeah. That was a real defining point. And I'm like, well, what does our church want to do?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I needed to get to the point where I was confident that I wasn't taking the easy road, the comfortable road, and not letting God teach me a hard thing. Yeah. So I think that was really important to me. Because I would have felt like I had compromised if I didn't do that.
I remember a big step for me during that time, and because I grew up through the youth group and stuff, was being like, am I a Christian or am I a soul revivalist? Am I actually willing to let God take me where he wants me to, or am I just comfortable hanging out with my friends?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think, and I'm not projecting that onto your experience. I'm just saying I remember going through that kind of during my brief time when soul revival wasn't a thing and I wasn't going anywhere. I was like, have I just been doing this thing because my friends went here and I like the people here or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that was an important part for me.
That's it. And I know you're not projecting that, and that definitely speaks very clearly into it. My situation was a bit different because I was a Christian before soul revival.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's probably why that thing of being part of helping be there as it was shaped was the thing for me. It's like so I've been a Christian. I've seen the other side. Look, there were some experiences I had in youth ministry before Soul Revival and even early days of Soul Revival. Jai is a bit cheeky. He, in his sermon the other week at Cronulla, he was speaking about 1 Corinthians 11, and one of the things he did as part of that sermon was he affirmed Leonie and myself as women who have a role at Cronulla. And he said something about talking to us afterwards, and he said, you could ask Fee about experiences in youth ministry, and I can't remember how he put it, but something like I knew exactly what he meant, or experiences with youth ministers when, or meetings with youth ministers or something. And somebody did come and ask me, and I giggled, and I'm like, I knew exactly what he was talking about. So what he was talking about was, while I was at Soul Revival, there was a time where, and he knows the story, he wasn't there. So that was when Stu and Tim and I were there. So they, so they were both youth ministers and I was student, or I might have actually only been volunteer anyway. I might have been on staff. Anyway, probably wouldn't have gone to them if I wasn't on staff. I know it must have been before, because when I went on staff was the same time as Matt, and it was earlier. Yes, I probably wasn't. Anyway, we were doing youth ministry stuff. We were the youth ministry team, so we went to the youth ministry stuff, and there was these gatherings of local youth ministers, and
primarily a male.
It was exclusively by myself.
Yeah.
And we would sit in a meeting, and I can't remember how it happened the first time it happened, but a pattern emerged where people would throw in ideas and they'd be like this, and we'd go with the ideas. And I would say something and that wouldn't, and I do remember how it happened. I said something and about 10 minutes later, somebody else in the room said exactly the same thing. And when I said it, it just rolled on. Many people, it doesn't have to be gender-based, but many people in that situation where, there's bigger personalities or whatever, but this happened to be gender-based. And so, and after the meeting, Tim had noticed, and Tim was like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, yes. And I said, but, my idea got out there and it got discussed. So in the end, God has a sense of humour. But then Tim took it upon himself to, at meetings subsequent to that, I would say something, the conversation would move on. And 5 or 10 minutes later, he would say exactly the same thing I said. And he'd be like, oh, and they'd roll with it. And it happened enough times that we realised it was not a coincidence.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it was really funny because I told that story to this person at Cronulla. And their response was, oh, that would have been really frustrating. It was a female who was sharing about being frustrated as a female sometimes. And I said, no, it wasn't actually. It was just funny. And I said, and all it did was brought home to me that wasn't how we rolled in my team. And I never felt like that in the teams that I was at Gymea or in any of the things that I've been at in Solis. And I realised I realised when I stopped being paid as a pastor that, and the conversations I had with other women who had worked in paid ministry and then had not, there was an assumption there straight away that had happened because of the way I'd been treated as a female. I was like, actually, it had nothing to do with that, which was very beautiful. And yeah, so I highly regard, and I suppose that's probably another big part of the picture. I've said many times that, I realised at Soul Revival we would, our pastoral team are very accountable and are always willing to listen to any issues and don't sweep things under the carpet. That was something that was important to me. So all those things work together. So yeah, yep, really cool.
Yeah. I had something to say and then it just completely left my head. So yeah, right. So I think you like kind of play yourself down a little bit when you were saying that. I was around sometimes when you shaped Soul Revival. Like I just see you as an integral part of Soul Revival. Like I know that you had the bit where you weren't thinking of being Soul Revival, and I understand why. Yeah. But I think it also, what I really like is when you were saying, I'm not going to shy away from something hard that God's trying to teach me. Yeah. I think that's really encouraging.
It's important. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, there was like God definitely was teaching me stuff. Like, well, and it's funny, like from a different place, but Stu has said something similar. I had said, I am loyal to my church and that's where I will go. So like God had to do a lot of working to help me to see, which I do now think, looking back, was his will, but he had to show me that was his will, because I felt like that was, and at the time, and I it doesn't make me, I don't think that was wrong, but I think that was a very important part of my journey, making that commitment, because I think long-term ministry, loyalty to people, and jumping around from place to place, it's like being a guest speaker. You can always be really exciting when you're a guest speaker.
When you're there once. Yeah.
But if you're preaching to your people week after week after week after week,
it's going to be a lot more harder things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think in Christian life, and sometimes things have to change,
Yeah.
But it's sort of funny. No, I say this with a part of sadness, because there were people at Grammy that I did have to leave, Braden being one of them. Like there was many people there who that happened, but it actually feels to me like I haven't actually, because the people that at the time that Soli's church started Soli's church in God's great provision to me and to others as well, not specifically to me, they predominantly were the key people that I was doing Christian life with, who had the same values and the same passion and commitment to expressing our faith in a particular way that we were convinced was true to the gospel. Not the only way, but true to the gospel. I'm still in church with them.
Because they're committed to the same values that you're talking about.
Yeah, and we'd been doing that together. So it's sort of, it was changing churches but not changing churches, if that makes sense. I don't know if anybody else has talked about it like that, but that's how it felt.
I was just thinking the encouraging thing I found was that when you're talking about that was the openness to go, what are you teaching me, God? Because I think actually that's quite a resilient response in itself. Is not about, oh God, why have you done this to me? Oh God, instead it's actually what are you doing, God?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important distinction to make, because then I think you make more thoughtful. Well, I feel like you made more thoughtful and more God-based decisions in that.
It took me a long time to realise that, there was lots of that again, we're going over old things a little bit, but the term where Stu and Matt resigned from Gymea, and I was having a term off scripture in church, and then there was probably 2 months in which I knew, actually more than that. Yes, it was November to January, where I knew didn't know where things were going to fall, but I knew things were happening, and had to make the decision of what I was going to do coming out of that. And then 9 months after that. So that's almost a year of having to just not go with the flow. It's pretty traumatic, but you go, I don't know. God just put things on your heart, I suppose.
The interesting link, though, is that you're talking about I realised I was committed to my church family. And back at the start of the episode, you said the reason that I found doing Saturday nights easy was because I used to do Saturday nights with my family.
Yeah.
So there's that interesting link of that. I think you said it took a while, but then you realise, actually, this is the family that I need to be with.
Yeah.
And something had taken you out of that. And it took, understandably so, it took you a long time to work through it. But then you're like, I need to return to my family.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really cool about it. And I think that...
And God's blessed me with that. And not everybody is blessed with that.
Yeah.
You know? And again, there are people who were part of that who've moved on. So it's not everyone.
Not everyone wants to do it and stuff. But I think something that all three of us here are talking about is that it'd be very hard for us to go to another church. Yeah. And not because we might have to, it might be God's will, but it would be very hard because we agree about being committed to each other and committed because of what Jesus has done. And I think that's where we're kind of getting to.
I feel like a little bit, not exclusively, and because I can only speak from my own experience, but 3 of us did not grow up in Christian homes. And I think that perhaps plays into that as well.
Yeah.
Because I suppose a difference, a blessing, a freedom of growing up in a Christian home is you've got, that's sort of the starting place, and then whatever spiritual brothers and sisters God gives you is on top of that.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how much that plays into it, but I just wonder if it does a little bit.
I think the spiritual brothers and sisters is a great way of putting it. Because, it's like I didn't have any grandparents that are Christian, but I see grandparents that are, I was talking to Pete and Bev yesterday.
Yeah.
I have grandparents, spiritual grandparents that are Christian that I see living out what does it look like to be retired and serving your church?
Serving a church.
Yeah.
What does it look like to be a dad and serving a church? What
Yeah.
does it look like to be a youth leader?
Yeah.
With all that youth experience.
Yeah, exactly. And coming back and loving those girls that you love every Friday fee. So I think I don't have that, but I have that.
Yeah.
And then I think that's the relationships that God blesses us with. And I think the idea of being loyal to each other in that means that I'm not worried about having a conversation with Joel, with Fee, where we disagree because we're you know what I mean? Like I could have a conversation with Fee where we have completely different opinions. And that is an awesome thing to have.
That does happen.
But that's
and this hilarious ID thing where we're personality thing where we're completely opposite. I'm like, of course we are. I know that.
Yeah, but that means that we actually grow more out of it, and we can have these conversations and these really fun ideas and debates and thoughts that we grow out of, and we don't have to worry about being like, well, I have to worry about. And of course, the way you communicate things is also very helpful. But I don't have to worry about Fee being like, oh, we don't agree, so we can't be friends, or we don't agree, so we can't do ministry together, or
Which I think for a lot of people in the secular world is a family thing, isn't it? You only have that with your family, but
we're
that's
stuck
really
with
insightful,
we're
Brayden.
stuck with each other, you know what I mean? So Whereas I feel like I have lots of those relationships with Torah Bible, where I can have those kinds of discussions, which I really value. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, so I don't know if the whole. Yeah, there's probably other things. I will go away and think.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you guys another time. But but that's as far as the reasons for that. I think all those things play in a real mixed sort of way. But also God, He challenges you. He gives you peace about things at different times. Yeah. And it was a double journey. Sadie was on that journey as well. So
Yeah,
Yeah, both
we'll
of
get
us
Sidey on at some
felt
point.
there.
Oh, we've got to get him on.
Good luck.
I was just thinking about that.
Have
when
you got Beck
mentioned-
on yet, Braden?
Yeah.
Or
a good
Karen, Joel?
I've tried.
One day.
I've
That's
tried.
why I'm
One day,
giggling. It's
one
so
day.
funny.
Should just get all three of them on. Imagine what a podcast that'd be. Just
Yeah.
Sidey, Beck, and Karen.
Yeah. We'll get back on at some point.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think, next school holidays, we'll try and get Sidey on.
Yeah.
My next question, I
Yep.
suppose, Fee, was going to be community groups Bible studies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time in a Bible study that you'd led.
Yep.
Because I was the SALT leader.
Yep.
And I think, I don't know if I realised it at the time, but I was being very well discipled. I still have memories because we were at Adam and Joe's place, weren't we?
And Hovea.
Down in their
Hovea,
downstairs room.
And then, it was the downstairs room at Hovea, I think, while you were part of it. And then they moved to Gummy Bay out of Grace Point, and the group continued there.
Yeah, and obviously because you were involved in leadership of SALT, like the Year 7, 8 group for longer than I was, that would make sense.
Yeah. So you would have then, like, at the end of the 2 years you're in SALT, probably then the natural progression. Not everybody did this. We had flexibility, obviously, for people, but you would have then moved on to a group that Jai would have been leading at the time.
I did.
Yeah.
What I think is interesting though is that I don't know if you led a community group / Bible study since then.
Well, I was leading that one, and I was leading the girls. Got to get the timing in my head. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that question is I'm surprised because the thing about we talked about Bible college and all your experience at youth ministry and very well equipped to lead a community group, but I think it's also a sign of your humility. It's like I don't mind too much. So my question was, I suppose, because you've been part of the community group that we've had at our place for, I think we were talking about maybe 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why you haven't led a Bible study before? Oh, since then, sorry.
I'm going to be cheeky. What's my pattern?
No one's asked her.
Right, okay.
Look, I mean, early on, I don't know, probably. Also, because, so when that Bible study finished was when we left Gummy, and then I actually moved, so there was no gap. So actually, in the time I was at Cogra, I was doing Bible study with Solis still through that whole time. So there was never a time where I wasn't in a Bible study with people from Solis.
Is that with the Inmans?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we started up a new group, when we left Gummy and the groups got mixed up, the composition of groups changed around a little bit. And so Sadie and I left. So Adam and Joe did continue to lead a group, but we left and joined Tom and Julie's group. And we're so passionate about doing that with Tom and Julia. It in my mind, it's a little bit like when Jai and Christine came back to pastor with us at Solis again, and we joined the Woolooware planning team. It was like just so much joy ministering with them. So so we were part of that group. So we just didn't. So and that group turned into your group.
Yeah,
which is another
because we
fun
just
story.
moved into their house.
You bought
so
the
Tom
house
and Julie,
I did not buy the
took
house.
over the house and the Bible study came
They
with the
rented
house.
a house and inherited a Bible study.
Yeah, it's like, does this house come with the shed? It's like, actually, it comes with the Bible study too.
It's on the real estate.
Like, come with the furniture? Yeah.
We're joking, but I know because at the time, so Matt was overseeing the small group ministry and he'd been chatting to you and Karen, and you said that Karen and Joel and Sadie were living in the same block, and they talked about wanting to have a Bible study, and we were like, oh, that's really, really cool. And it was funny because a part of me was like, if Joel and Karen have a Bible study in our unit block, like, what a no-brainer, of course. We should be part of that.
Yeah.
But we were like, I've never actually thought about it this way. God does have a sense of humour. Like, so that was a tussle in my mind, but we love being part of the group with Tom and Julie and felt really committed there. So in God's funny sense of humour, he then moved you into the house.
Into that house.
Yeah, so Tom and Julie moved to Orange.
Yeah.
You guys were in the house. And I remember having a couple of conversations with Matt where he said he'd been talking to you, and I'm like, please make sure they don't feel like they have to have us, like, you know, like with that. And so I know, and yeah. So I probably never told you this, Joel, but I was saying to Matt, like if they want us to go, like, we can totally go. Like, I don't want them to, like, have to inherit our ragtag bunch. We're a bit ragtag on a Monday sometimes. Yeah. Anyway, but what a beautiful blessing that, that's what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've continued to be in Bible, and it was I'm probably the longest term Monday Bible studier in Soul Revival. I reckon I'm going to claim that.
The original, like,
because there's no other Bible studies on Monday.
Yeah.
And the Salt Bible study, and that was it. We used to always joke that, you know, because nobody wanted to do Bible study on a Monday night.
Nope.
But Salt, you know, we would do, so Rev and Solies, they got Tuesday night and Thursday night because Wednesday night was Leaders Blah. But we got Monday, and we like it's like that whole thing, you know, the underdog. You own it. We're like, yeah, we'll do Monday.
Yeah, we're the best.
They gave us Monday, and we still rock Monday.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Stewie will laugh
Still
about
do.
that. He'll probably say it wasn't deliberate at all, but we always said it was.
Yeah, Monday. It's funny though. I think Monday it's still a ragtag bunch.
Yep.
It's the people that are like, the only night I can do is Monday.
Sometimes. Yep.
Sometimes, but I think we've learned a lot. It's so funny this go full circle of me being led by you, and now I'm leading a Bible study that you're in.
Yep.
But like I said, it's always like, Fia, help me out with this. I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And Fia's like, well, of course, this is what happens in this. And I'm like, that's right. That's why you're in this community group.
Not always. Sometimes I don't. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it is. Yeah, it's lovely, like to have had that input. You know. And you do sometimes realize, like, same with, like, you've had a great Bible study, you've listened to a sermon, you've had some time reading the Word yourself. If God's shown you something and you're able to show that to someone else, that's really cool. And then they go to the Bible and they work it out for themselves. Like, it's not, there's just that opportunity to raise. And I suppose another thing Bible College does is it helps you to be better at where things fit.
Yeah.
And Berea, doing New Testament or Old Testament Berea, would do a similar thing.
Definitely,
but that just wasn't an option when I was young. Like, we didn't have any of that sort of stuff. Actually, we did do one funny thing. GACCOM, Gymea Anglican Church College of Ministry. I've been the guinea pig for many things.
Yes.
That was Tim Foster, who was a pastor at, like, an assistant minister at Gymea. It was his, like, training thing. Yeah. That I did many, many years ago with a couple of other people. It was about 6 of us. And we were the first year that went through that. And then he decided to do a second year, and we were the first second year. And then when Berea, I was in the first Berea. And so, but again, like, that's what a great privilege to be there while things are being formed and be a part of that as well. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. I think community groups are a funny thing, aren't they? It's like, it's great that it's so regular, and sometimes you don't want to go, but you go. It's similar to, like, being, like you're saying, committed to your family.
It helps when it's at your house.
Yeah, well, that was one of the reasons I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
It was also because we had young kids.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to do it.
Yeah, and another thing, I mean, like, hosting and leading don't have to go together.
No.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, but that obviously made sense in that regard. So I mean, so we met at Adam and Joe's house because they had young kids and they were the only ones at the time. And then when we had, like,
I still remember holding Hudson or Daniel, one of them, and then they gave me food poisoning for one.
Oh no!
Yeah.
I don't think I know that story.
Yeah, one of them gave me food poisoning. I was very sick.
How did they give you food poisoning?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Just from holding a baby?
Something. I don't know. One of them was extremely dribbly. I can't remember which one it was. I think it might have been
food poisoning or baby poisoning.
Maybe.
Yeah, no.
You got
I'm
poisoned by
certain
a
that one of
baby.
them made me sick because I was
Yeah.
like, I'm so crook.
Yeah.
There was I think it was Daniel was the one that was dribbly.
Yeah.
Explains a lot now.
There's just something lovely about the milestones that you get together as a
I
Bible
think
study.
so.
I think like Fee brought up in a previous podcast, like the photo with Ethan in the background.
Yeah.
and his
Yeah.
cot. Like I was in Jared's Bible study for a number of years, and I remember just having a reflection with Haley at the last Bible study we had with Jared and Haley, which was last year. That like Beck and I had come into that Bible study not married. We weren't married yet. We weren't even engaged yet. I had never been to Week Away. We were still trying to figure out where we fit in the community. And we left that Bible study having gone through a number of moves with Jared and Haley. They had Ezra. We had got married. I left that Bible study as a pastor. And like you think about like the amount of life change that we did together, the praying through one of my grandparents dying, the praying through Jared and Haley's ups and downs. I think it's a really lovely thing that you get to, like you've said, it's always, sometimes it's raining, it's like 7 o'clock at night, you've already had dinner or something, you're just like, oh man, like, are we really going to go out in this, you know what I mean? But like, there's something about doing it together and just experiencing life together that's really special, and you just make those memories.
It's like that family aspect that you're
exactly
talking about through this whole episode. It's
Yeah.
it's about being a family.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also we love talking about being, it's family and it's friends and those two things. And I feel like what we're trying to capture is the best of those things from our culture. Because I mean, there are people now who family is not a place of haven and safety for them, and friendship is that. So, you know, the Bible uses the language of both things, I think, really, really helpfully. So whatever captures. So there's aspects for me which are family-based and aspects which are friendship-based. But all of them lead to, you know, God putting you in a place with other people and, you know, He doesn't give you your gifts for yourself.
Yeah.
He gives you them for everybody else.
Yeah.
That's a part of the body stuff. So I love being part of those groups where other people have got different things. And
and you just, you see how, like, it's again that doing life together. And you mentioned a couple of podcasts ago, which is a funny thing to say. It's not even like a couple, your Bible study with your girls, and you ended up like meeting up and going, was that last year or the year before you met up and went away with them? Which is lovely.
Hang on, they're 8 years younger than me, so 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So last year we did a hang on. At the last one we had a day where we got together because the weekend just got a little bit too hard to manage with lots of people's timetables. So the girls that I had led when they were in year 9 to 12, it was the year of their 40ths.
Yeah.
And they decided to celebrate that by getting together. And it was one of those funny things, you know, when you get added into a chat, I think it must have been WhatsApp. Is WhatsApp the one where, or Messenger the one where you get added into a chat and then you can see the previous chat? Is that the case on both of them? I don't know.
Maybe.
I think maybe. Anyway, whichever one it was one that I hadn't used much before. And so the question was asked, would you want to come along? And I was like, yeah. And then I got added into the chat and I, you know, because I'm Fee, I scrolled back and looked. Some people wouldn't.
I need context.
Well, I scrolled back and there was a chat thing about inviting me, which was like, would she even want to? And, and it made me giggle because I'm like, of course I would want to. I was so stoked to be asked. So they said, would I like to go too? So I got to do this beautiful weekend away, predominantly organised by Julie Inman, and we said we wanted to come to Orange, so she was happy to organise it anyway, but she organised it in Orange, so we got a B&B there because we wouldn't have all fit in their place, and spent a weekend together. And for some of us, we hadn't spent significant time hanging out, not since the Bible study itself, because the Bible study, the Bible study was when they were finished when they were in year 12, because we were all going into different ministry paths and doing. So we split up into different groups based around that predominantly. But so we'd been at church together still, but it'd been a long time, and some of those some of the members of that Bible study are no longer in Solis. There's a couple still. Some were for longer than others, gone to different churches. Some of them aren't attending church at the moment, but the members of the group, when it wrapped up, all came. So there were people who'd been in it before. There was one girl who had left before we finished having the group together, who decided she didn't want to follow Jesus. But all the others were there.
That would have been really just a cool experience.
It was just crazy. Like,
and relive memories.
It felt so short.
Yeah.
Like there was so much more that could have been done and could have been said, but it was just delightful. Yeah. So it's really, really special and great privilege to have those relationships. Yeah.
That's cool. I got a last question.
Yeah.
For
Joel.
For this one.
Nah, we're wrapping it up.
I think we're wrapping it up. I think this is the last one for me. Planting Woolooware, which has now become Cronulla.
Uh-huh.
You're part of the leadership team and still are. Can you give us the highlights of doing that? And
like the whole thing, or just at the moment? God, it's a long time now.
It must have been pretty cool to do something with Jai again.
It was so cool. That was the defining thing. Like, it's like, Jai and Chris are coming back to Solis, and it'd been so special ministering with them in the Gymea days, because particularly, because Jai was looking after year 9 and 10, and I was looking after year 7 and 8, and we were doing school stuff together. So there was so much, and I don't think that always happens potentially, but there was so much fruit from ministering together, and even like planning our curriculum across the different things. Looking at the kids, like talking about different crew, and like the leaders would come in and they'd lead the SALT crew for a couple of years and usually then roll into. So there was so much that we did together, and just being at schools for all the ministry that was happening there. That was really, really cool. I'm like, that was amazing. And also we lived in Cronulla and they talked about planting in Woolooware. Yeah. So we went so far as to buy a house just down the street from where we were meeting at Woolooware. We moved in November 2019. And shortly after was COVID, and we've never been back. So God does have a bit of a sense of humour there. Because that was literally, we weren't sure what the best decision was in terms of when we moved out of our unit in Cronulla. We were originally looking for another unit in Cronulla, and there's just a whole bunch of things that were going on. And I thought that God was saying this is okay because it's close to church. So, it was at the time, but it just wasn't meant to be continuing, which is fine. So that's that was part of that little journey. So I giggled. I'm like, I tried to live down the road I tried to live close to my church. I guess, come on. Anyway, it's all right.
But in essence, you hadn't planted a church before. Like because you weren't part of the launch team of Soul Revival.
Yeah.
Or the original Soul Revival church launch team. So what was it?
Oh, well, I mean, it was great.
Was it like what you were expecting?
Oh, was planning it what I was expecting? I don't know, because I have been involved in starting stuff before. So not church per se, but like doing something different with youth or doing like, so it didn't feel that different from that way. So we did. I mean, one of the beautiful things that I've seen is because Cronulla was the first plant that we did, we learned from our mistakes. And so watching other gatherings that have started since be able to avoid some of the
pitfalls,
that's a strong
word. Just bumps along the road.
To avoid some of that stuff because of we'd learned from from the way, and that there were things that we just, needed to learn. So the number of us there were, like the place, the composition of the team, the way we filled different roles in the team, like many of those things, we would now do a little bit differently. So there's a little part of me that, like, the real, like, God does what he does for a reason, and some of the real strength and growth and robustness of what happened at Ride, I think, in a small way, was helped by what we learned at Cronulla. So as we've celebrated Ride, that makes the things that were at Cronulla a little bit hard make sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you don't know why God's done something, but so that's really, really cool. And that's just one little aspect. There's many other things, and Ride is not the same as Cronulla by any means. But there were just some learnings that happened.
It's just like perspectives and learnings. I had a moment this week where I was sitting with Stu and Jai, and we were sending something out, and we figured out, like, I don't know, there's around 800 people and that's minusing off a bunch of people. Like, there's around 800 people that are attending Soul Revival at the moment. And I think you just have that moment where I was like, man, leaving Gymea was really hard. Like, it sucked. It really did. And I'm like, there's still aspects of it that I'm like, and there's still people that are still going through that, and it, like, I'm not diminishing that at all. I'm not saying it wasn't hard. I'm not saying it didn't suck. I'm not saying that there's still not aspects that, like, you wish you could go back and change things and do things. But at the same time, I'm just like, wow, look at what God's doing in the Shire. And not just through us, like, God's doing lots of things through all his churches. But I was just like, wow, like, this, it's crazy. The way that God has blessed so many people in our community. And the way that that's changed and grown. And I kind of view that in the same way as what you're talking about there, Fee, with, like, it's like, as Woolaware, now Cronulla, it's like, we were figuring stuff out. Like, if we had gone back, maybe we would have done that differently, or maybe we would have changed that in hindsight. But now you get to look at something like Ride and be like, wow, like, it's so amazing, or Cronulla at the moment, and go, wow, like, yes, there was bumps, but, like, look at the fruit of what came out of that. And I think, it's easy to say that in hindsight, isn't it? Like,
but no, it's
but it
true.
is lovely that God gives you that gift to look back.
And shows you those things. He doesn't have to, but sometimes he does, and it's a real blessing. So, and it is, like, it's hard to sort of remember, like, some of the stuff.
That's what the 30th anniversary was so good for. I think when we had that 30th anniversary celebration,
3010,
the 3010.
Well, and that was 5 years of Cronulla as well. So at the same time, we didn't do anything big, but I like
30-10-5.
30-10-5.
But the thing, like, I was just thinking, I remember when I walked in and we had all that stuff up on the factory of, look at all these things, like all the cultural artifacts. And I was just like,
number of which came from my garage.
Well, the programs, I think all the programs and stuff came from.
Oh, so good!
But I was just
some
like,
of my t-shirts.
It's very similar to what you're saying, Brandon. It wasn't like, look what we've done, but my sense was, look what we've done, like, under God.
Look what God's done.
Look what He's done.
Like,
and given us the freedom to do in a space, like, maybe, or an area where it's not very encouraged to do so many different Christian things.
And
we, as we said, we're all from non-Christian families. And I think it was like, look what God has done in this, and that's why that hindsight is so good, and it's so good to be able to put up all those things on the wall and go, look at it. Like,
and some people were so surprised. People were like blown away, going, "Oh my gosh, look at all that!" And I remember having a couple of conversations with people over, like, at the 30th, and then I think we left them up there for a week after. Over that, like, short period of time, and I can't remember how this conversation came about. It was a conversation with someone where we came to a conclusion, and then I had a similar conversation with other people and went, yeah, this is what we were thinking about. So it was really, really lovely. Like people were like getting excited about the programs and all the different things and how you could see them progressing from like, so I had some of the ones that literally like we used clip art and we like, you know, we were a little bit cheeky because we took some of the coloured paper from the church office and used that to do our programs because like, you know, we didn't just use the white program. So, and each term there'd be a different colour. And then from there through all the iterations to like Jared creating these masterpieces that, you know, and Jared and I hilariously like would argue because he would want to make them good from a graphic point of view and minimize the information. I'd be like, these are for your 7 and 8 kids. This is the days before mobile phones.
Well, yeah, I think
needs to have everything on it.
Our programs now are basically riddles.
Well, I have had a giggle this term because like there was the discussion the other week about, we probably did make an error in not clearly saying which nights were out nights. And I laughed to myself and I'm like, here's a sign of how people change over time. Like I have completely let go. Like once upon a time, there is no way a program that happened that I was aware of would have not had that on it. But I just let go. That's it's not my job. It is what it is. And I'm like, wow. Like I had also looked at the program and not thought about that.
Yeah.
So
we're experiencing a lovely time in terms of culture of the youth where they're just like,
they want to come anyway.
Yeah, exactly. The selling point is not what we're doing, and therefore we can be a bit cheeky and mysterious in what we're doing because
But I think some of the parents were a little bit unhappy.
Yes. So.
You're taking them to rant tonight? Yes. I didn't even know there was a permission note. I'm like,
you're going too far this way, and then we'll
fair enough. We were swinging. But anyway, like I said, back in the day, but those beautiful programs. But the conversation that I had was about every one of those programs has a term on it.
Yeah.
Approximately 10 weeks. And every one of those represents a group of people getting to like every single night, planning activities, somebody doing a talk, having a commitments group. And that was the thing that just went, oh, wow. Like how that was what was blowing my mind.
Yeah.
Like each piece of paper was like 10 weeks of not one person, like a whole bunch of people. And obviously the crew were there as well. But the particular thing I was thinking about in these conversations was like a team of leaders who'd done that together. So I think it helped me because I was talking to people who were appreciating the depth of long-term relationship. And obviously not all those people, but some of those people like who, like some of those programs on the wall, like lots of those programs on the wall, some of the people who were there, for many, many of them, I still am blessed to do church with. And we may, I don't know, we may not know what each other's favourite colours are. We may not even have much of a concept of what we do outside of church for a job. We might not even know how many siblings we have. Yeah. But there is a depth of relationship there that cannot be minimised. And like, of course, there are beautiful things in knowing lots of things that people like, but actually I do think that you can have a very strong, very beautiful relationship with someone and actually know that stuff. Not know that stuff necessarily. Yeah. Because it's about Jesus. Yeah. And I that encourages me greatly, especially when people coming into Soulies are trying to find how do they fit. I suppose I just want to encourage them all by saying you've got Jesus in common. That's really all you need. Other stuff may help in different ways. And obviously, you know, you talked about being in a Bible study where you prayed for each other. If you know other things, you know, you can pray for each other. I don't want to minimise any of that stuff, but at the heart, it's Jesus that joins you together. And that's what that wall of programs represented, which is really, really delightful. All those times of people putting aside what they could have done, you know. None of those people had to plan a game or plan a mystery night or plan a wide games or you know, or plan a food night or write a talk. Yeah. They didn't have to do any of that stuff. But Jesus said, like, you know, in their faith in Jesus, they recognized that was a worthwhile and a significant thing to do.
You've articulated a lot better than I did. Oh. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. it was like looking back, like, oh my gosh, we did all of this together, and for a very specific reason. Like, imagine how many Bible talks have been part of all those programs and things like that. Like,
and people often say things like, "Oh, I went to Sunday school and I don't remember anything I learned," or "I went to youth group," and I feel like sometimes we're a bit flippant about that, because that actually doesn't mean that you didn't learn stuff. You know what I mean? Like, it was just absorbed into you. You don't remember where you learned it.
Yeah.
But you still learned it.
Yeah.
And on the opposite side, stuff that's perhaps not said in the best way, or like, you know, not taught clearly, can actually shape you for a long time too. And, you know, like plenty of times, like I've had experience, I've talked to other people, experience where they've heard a sermon or they've done a Bible study or they've read something themselves and gone, is that what that passage really says? Wow, I had something else in my head. And potentially that's come from it being taught with a, you know, not the full amount of care that it could have been at some point in the past. Yeah, so we have to be really aware of the beauty and also the pitfalls of that as well.
I think, and also the gospel being preached 40 weeks, basically, of every term to young.
Every year.
Every year, sorry.
Yep.
Well, yeah.
That's all right. 40 weeks a term, 40, that's a long
40
term.
weeks, 40 weeks a year, at least, that people were like hearing the gospel.
Yeah. And
then, as Braden said, like, and you also said, Fee, like the depth of, I don't know, like it's like a spiritual intimacy, like, because you have that with Jesus, that we have that with each other, because we're all doing it together, and I had people tell me the gospel and love me and take care of me and look after me, like you, Fee, and Jai and other people like that. And then at the same time, it's like, I have to do that. It wasn't, for me, when I realized that I was going to be a leader, I'm like, oh, I can't back out of this now. Like, I need to, you know, in a sense, continue a bit of the legacy of people did it for me. I need to do it for others as well.
I remember that very clearly from your chip lunch, Braden. As you spoke about that, it just warmed my heart so much, because I'm like, yes, God did that despite that break in a relationship where you felt that your leaders hadn't looked like you, like God had still done the thing in you. Yeah. But I want to do that.
Yeah. And I think it's the blessing that we have, that we get to partner with God as his gospel goes out. And I think it was a nice kind of summary of the work that he's done through Soul Revival so far. But I think it's also just wild when I sit there and just go, like, how crazy is it that we can partner with God and do stuff that has eternal consequences? Yeah, like, we can look back at a wall, and I love Kate's
the timeline. Yes.
And the fun thing also about the timeline was just thinking about all the things that aren't on there. It's like, look at all that stuff, and then you'll still have like, oh, there's also that, and there's that, and we did that, and that's amazing. But you think about, like, that's 30 years as a ministry, 10 years as a church. Like, wow, God's done a lot of amazing things through Soul Revival in Ryde, in the Southern Shire. But this work has eternal consequences, and we get to be a part of that. I think that's right. What's amazing about it, isn't it?
And we don't always know what they're going to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, who knows, you know, that teenager who rocked up once to youth group. There's a couple that have been at Cronulla recently. Jai is marrying them this weekend. Next weekend, by the time people listen, they're getting.
Sorry,
Jai. That's the right terminology, Braden. Jai is marrying.
I'm sorry. I'm like scarred by like asking Stu if he would marry Beck and I. He's like, oh, I think you should marry each other. Shut up.
That's so cheeky.
Like, how many times have you made that joke?
Jai is officiating. He is the minister who will conduct the marriage ceremony. Being silly now, but the groom was at Kirrawee High and was mates with Wilmo. And we talked and I think
need to get Momo on.
So, and I was just like exploring a little bit, like, did you ever? And we're not 100% sure, but we think he might have actually come to youth group with Wilmo. So I may have actually, like, you know, been there, and like, you know, it would only have been a couple of times or maybe even once.
Yeah.
And and I don't have any recollection of him at all.
Yeah.
But then you have this little like come back in, and they were looking for someone to. I was going to say to marry them, and now I can't say it, Braden. You've ruined it. Oh, anyway, looking for a minister to do their wedding, and they had come along to Solly's Crime, and they've had that connection with Jai. So I'm not sure if they will walk with us long term, but you just have those little moments where there's those little connections. You're like, oh wow, how cool! Yeah, there's just now another little gospel connection and input there.
Yeah. I met someone at college a couple of years ago who came up to me and was like, "Oh, Braden," I had no idea who it was. And it was like, I was one of Tyson's friends. I went to Guymer Anglican for a little while, and now he's going into gospel ministry, which is really exciting. I met another dude who did ministry in Wollongong for a long time, and he was like, I heard one of Stu's talks once at like Fig Tree or something, and was like, that was probably when we were doing Treehouse. Yeah. And so that's still with me. I still think about that. It's like, wow, you never know what God's using in those things, and how far those things kind of go out. It's really encouraging.
Yep. Speaking of which,
time to wrap up the chips.
Time to wrap up the chips.
Wrap up the chips.
But also, it's been really encouraging doing 4-part series on Fee Francesconi's life. Yeah. Frankie, what did he call Sidey? Frankie? Fee Frankie. I'm glad that you're part of the Sorrel family. That's what I'll say.
So am I.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are, and very encouraged by you, and appreciate the many hours of ministry and time that you dedicate to the gospel. And I like to always say to anyone who wants to listen that you were the first person that I heard the gospel from. So thank you.
Yeah, well, any chance, to do that.
I think you take it. That's the thing, you do.
Yeah, just, want to,
You're doing it anyway, so thank you.
What can God do?
That's right.
That's it.
Yeah. Any final words, Brandon?
What do you say to wrap up these episodes?
It's been a big bag of chips.
Like you just said, Joel, like I remember I think it was in the first sermon I ever preached on a Saturday. I mentioned Fee because Fee taught me how to pray.
Oh, wow.
In prayer group at Kirrawee High. I think my lasting memory is Scripture was on a Friday afternoon, and we would miss the bus consistently on a Friday afternoon because we were so excited to talk to. I'm going to get emotional. I was so excited to talk to you after class. You just think about the people that you've given your whole life to a lot of people, and I really appreciate that.
That's really true.
Yeah, and now we asked you to hang out on Friday, and so you're hanging out on Friday. You just need to ask. And I see the amount of effort and passion and excitement you put into the crew still on Fridays.
Your energy.
Yeah, exactly. You're just so excited to talk to them, so excited to hang out and like invest life, and you just see how excited that crew get. That we had Fee came along on a Sunday morning at the start of this year, and a lot of the Sunday morning crew don't normally, the girls who come along on a Sunday morning don't normally get to see Fee because she goes to Cronulla and
Saturday night
and Friday night, and so we had a combined service in January, and you would have thought a rock star turned up to church. They were so excited that Fee was on Sunday morning to hang out. And I think that just speaks to the level of care and relationship that you put into everything.
I agree.
They come bouncing up.
You do.
So like at the AGM, Sally and Shani. And it is funny because I'm like, there's all these MCC people here and there's Ride people here, and part of me is like, I want to make sure I spend some time with them because I don't see them all the time. But like, how can I walk away from those beautiful girls? Like, it was just delightful. They came up, we were chatting, and then then Zali and some of the Ride crew and I were sort of in a bit of a conversation as well, which was really, really, really cool. Yeah, really looking forward to Week Away, which is coming up very quickly now, and having all that time and seeing like it'll be a different mix potentially this time, but they're all a year older. Yeah, and there's been a lot of changes in them just growing up in that year. So just so stoked. Yeah. Stoked to see them perhaps get more out of like the relational stuff they've always got a lot out of. But I'm stoked to see them look more widely. I've started talking to the younger girls about like the older girls, because we split into the different ages, like 7, 8, 9, well, sort of, for commitments. But I've started talking to the girls about, like, the rest of the night you don't have to be split. Like, get to know the older girls a little bit. And we've been having a few conversations. Even on Wednesday, we're having a conversation about that. And I've been encouraging them, week away, for those of you who are able to go, is a chance to start that, and then we can spread that to the wider group that are there on a Friday. Just doing that relational stuff. But I'm excited to see them get more out of the biblical content this year, because I think they were just dipping their toes.
Yeah.
Some of them so far. So that's really, really exciting.
Well, thank you, Fee. Time to wrap up this big bag of chips. a few orders. A few orders of chips, but thank you.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for everything you do, and thank you for being on the podcast.
My pleasure. Always happy to hang out and podcast with you guys.
You do a good job.
Don't talk about me anymore. Something else.
Drop in the chat or in the comments who you thought we missed out on
last week.
Yes. You missed out on the mystery guest. But as always, we thank you for everyone that's listening or watching, and we're gonna finish with a one way.